In this video, we'll take a closer look at this MIDI mapping panel. If you remember from a first video, when I said that I had to set this controller to 1 in both these places, I said that we could scale this value to a range. Well, we're going to see what that means and get a more of a complete picture of this MIDI mapping panel. And the best way to do that is to work on a little feature for this fader where we show the fader's X value directly on the fader. So we have this monitor here, and it's showing the current value of X, but actually a fader has a little built-in mini monitor that it can show. So if I come down to the object panel, I can tick this value box, and now a little mini monitor appeared below the title. And this works just like a regular monitor. There's a text field here that I can set to display the value, and it's set to display X. So we can see that as I move it down, it's showing the fader's value of 0, and going to the top, it's showing 1, and resetting back down to 0.5. So that's neat, but it's actually not that helpful for a MIDI controller, because a mod wheel doesn't send values between 0 to 1. It's sending values between 0 to 127. So if I look in Cubase here, if I take my pencil, because it's easier than recording, I'll just drag a curve up, and you can see the values rise all the way to the top at 127, and as they fall, they go back down to 0. And then when it resets, it would reset back down to 64. Right, so it would be much more helpful on this fader if we could see the actual MIDI value that's being sent out. And we can do that easily with just a little bit of math. So if I come down to this text field, all I have to do is to multiply this X by 127, right? Because when X is 0, 0 times 127 is 0. And when X is 1, 1 times 127 is 127. So all the values are just going to scale in between. But that's not quite right, because we're getting all of these decimal places on the fader. And it's not possible to send 115.761. The MIDI value is always going to be rounded, so it would be more helpful if we could get rid of those extra numbers. And we can do that easily by setting the monitor's precision to 0. And now that will make all the decimals disappear, and the value will be rounded, and we're getting the proper MIDI value. So if you look at the MIDI mapping panel, that's exactly what the scale value is doing. It's scaling the value of X to values between 0 and 127. And so that's why I needed to set 1 in both these places, because if I set it to 1 to 127, then this is going to send a different controller number for every different value of X. And I can't think of a use for that. Maybe one of you guys can write in the comments below if you can think of a reason you'd want to send a different controller number for every position of X. But generally, we want to send one MIDI controller number. So we constrain that to 1 so that's constant. So what's really going on here is it's saying listen for changes to X, and anytime it changes, scale it to values between 0 to 127, generate a control change message of MIDI controller 1 on MIDI channel 1, and send it out Lemur target 0. So it's kind of like an on-expression script in that it's listening for changes to X, and anytime it changes, it's generating this MIDI message. And in fact, it's possible to listen for changes to Z and generate MIDI messages too, and there might be some uses for that.